Okay, in this video we are going to be working through CameraRaw and Photoshop. So this is going to be the basic workflow that we use in Photo 1. So I am looking at Bridge here, and this view is from CS5, but in CS3 it's all going to be the basic same content. So first I have my image selected here in my preview window, and I can tell just by looking at it that it is kind of dark, so I am going to be relying on CameraRaw to make some major adjustments. So from Bridge I'm going to go Command R, and that's going to take me into CameraRaw. I could also use Control R if I were on a PC. The first thing I want to do is I want to, and this is without a gray card, this is just out shooting and coming into CameraRaw without a gray card and making adjustments. So the first thing I would want to do, because this image is so dark, is I would probably want to make an exposure change first. So the exposure slider here is going to affect my white point. I'm going to set the brightest point in my image based on what I see in my histogram. And what I'm going to do is hold down Alt and Option key. On my keyboard, I'm going to click on the slider, and I'm going to watch that histogram as I slide my exposure slider towards that white part, and I'm watching that black triangle as well in the top right corner. So I'm going to get this as close as possible, and I can see that that triangle is still black, that top right triangle. Moving it a little further, and eventually it's going to start clipping. Eventually I'm going to start losing information. I can see it right there. The triangle's now blue, and there's a blue patch in the top left corner of my image. So I want to back it off a little bit because it's warning me that I'm about to lose information there. So I'm backing it off until that triangle, now it's turned black, and that's a good reference point. So I'm going to let go. And the highlights do look a lot better. I can adjust it a little bit from that point, but that's at least a good starting place. I'm also going to come down and I'm going to do the same things with the blacks. I'm holding down Alt Option and I'm setting the darkest point in my image. And what I'll do is I'll back that off just a tiny bit to see what it will look like when that triangle becomes black, and I'm going to let go. And it looks alright. It's a little overcast, but it looks okay. What I can do to warm it up is I can use my temperature slider, and maybe I can adjust my color temperature a tiny bit there to warm it up. I can also affect brightness and contrast if I want to. Vibrance is a really nice slider because it affects contrast in the midtones. I'm just going to increase that a tiny bit. And if we're curious about the changes that we've made, we can click on Preview and we can see the changes that we have made. So I want to point out that my black point now, okay, my shadows up here in my histograms, that is now clipping some based on the changes that I probably made with the vibrance slider. So something to point out, that all your changes, even though you've set black point and white point, can still affect your histogram afterwards. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead now and move into Photoshop. Oh, one last step. Before we do though, what we're going to need to do is figure out how we want to import it into Photoshop, what sort of color space, and we want to make sure this is set to Adobe RGB 1998, and we also have all these other presets set as well. I can choose if I want to increase the size of my image or if I want to decrease the size of my image. The default that's selected here is what the image is originally set up as, so that's going to be the best ideal working space, image size I mean, to bring into Photoshop, unless I wanted to decrease it. We don't ever really want to increase our image unless we have to, but the best place to do it is here in CameraRaw. So I'm going to leave that the size it needs to be. I'm going to say OK. And we'll say open image, and it's going to take us into Photoshop now. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this segment of the video and start a new one soon. So just watch for the next video. It'll talk you through what to do in Photoshop.